So, topic of watercolor, I did want to ask you specifically whether there was any reason in particular why you appreciate the distinctive potential of watercolors, and perhaps they allow you to do things that other types of paint or would allow you to do.
I think that the thing is, as a medium, it's an easy medium for someone that's not doing it in a studio full time. There's also a long tradition in architecture of doing watercolors in the Beaux-Arts era, and a lot of the drawings that architects used to be very much watercolor based. And so I think to a large degree it came out of that culture. And when there aren't any in here, but in college, I was quite good by that time at painting architecture. So I've got a whole slew of architectural, very, specific to building designs. And before I started designing on the computer, I would almost always do a watercolor of each project that I designed. And then when the computer allowed you to do this in 3D and allowed you to do something different, I sort of abandoned the architectural painting and just focused on the fine arts painting. Zaha Hadid actually is one of the other few architects who paint a lot. And she started out with these huge canvases, maybe 15 feet tall, some of them. And she would work out her design ideas, in acrylic and oil paint. But I think she had the advantage of having a full-time studio where she could do that, where I have a corner of a room. So watercolors, facilitated the ability to be expressive, but without having to have a lot of physical space.
You brought up computers, and of course I would say that, even in your line of work, you have to sort of be in touch with all the technological advancements and so on. But I mean, how would you describe your relationship to the new technologies when it comes to fine arts?
So it's interesting because, well, two things. One is this idea of embracing paradox. And to me, paradox is how to be visceral and yet virtual at the same time. So, and to embrace both of those things and kind of seek the quality. So back in 1991, when software was just coming out that allowed you to design on the computer, interestingly enough, I had bought a computer and I had bought some software, and I was just playing around with it when I got laid off at the job I was at. So I ended up having 10 months with nothing to do except convert my portfolio from watercolors and drawings into 3D models. And I taught myself how to do 3D modeling and how to do graphic design in the computer, in Photoshop. So I was absolutely an early adopter of digital design, and actually an advocate that architects needed to do more design in 3 dimensions on a computer. And one of the things about that is that we design physical objects, and we're using very crude 2-dimensional tools to design those 3-dimensional objects. It's actually quite a bit more powerful to design a 3-dimensional object using a 3-dimensional tool, even though it's a virtual tool, but to use it. And I discovered that once I got over the idea that I didn't have to sketch everything, it's so much more consistent with what we do to design in 3D in a modeling program. So, but I spent maybe, 5 or 6 years trying to do it exclusively in the modeling program, which of course is naive because you need to, in reality, do sketching and things in 3D. So you need a digital side and you need a kind of a physical side to it, because your ideas don't flow fast enough if you only do the digital design part. So what happened was, when I first started teaching my digital design course at UC Berkeley, I made the students only do work in 3D on the computer, and they were not allowed to do any sketching. And part of this was to get them over the learning curve. And now, interestingly enough, now that all the kids coming out of school know how to design in 3D, none of them want to sketch. So now my design assistants, my crew in the office, I make them sketch all the time because they try to make the one perfect object in 3D, and it takes too long. And they really need to go through 20, 30 different ideas and think in a more expansive way. And sketching is the only way to really do that. So I have to try to push them, pull them, trick them into sketching more often, which is not as easy as it seems. They don't want to draw. The young architects don't want to draw. They see it as old school. Why am I doing this?
Well, that can't be a good thing.
Well, I don't think so at all. Because like I said, they tend to try to pick one idea at the beginning and obsessively work on it in 3D. And I say, you're going to work up one idea. You're going to spend 10 hours on it. And I'm going to dismiss it in 10 seconds. I'd rather have you do 30 or 40 sketches, and then let's figure out which ones are good, and let's figure out which ones you're going to explore. But they just try so hard to get it into 3D right away. But sometimes the fundamental idea is just not that good. And they haven't, you really do need, in architecture, you have to explore a number of different things. And that's actually part of the joy of designing, is to come up with 20 different ideas. And, 18 of them are going to be pretty bad, but it's the 2 that are brilliant. That's the only way you can get that.